Magyanatmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitan Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Dandavad Pranams. Welcome to everyone to our regular Thursday Bhagavad Gita meeting. Very happy to be in all of your good company. So I think it was last week we had quite a lively discussion about hell. It was a lot of fun. And we are still in chapter 16, is it? Or is it 17? Chapter 17. I'm going to start the screen share. Share sound. Okay. So chapter 70 went through the first 10 verses, and so we'll continue today. Let's go and hear again our Guru Dev. So we can listen to those first 10 verses again and then go up to verse 20. Here we are.
अथ सप्तदशोऽध्याय श्रद्धात्रय विभाग योग अर्जुन उवाच ये शास्त्रविधिमुत्सृज्य जजन्ते श्रद्धयान्विता तेषां निष्ठा तु का कृष्ण सप्तमाहो रजतस्तम श्री भगवान उवाच त्रिविधा भवति श्रद्धा देहिनां सा स्वभावजा सात्विकी राजसी चैव तामसी चेति तां शृणु सत्तानुरूपा सर्वस्य श्रद्धा भवति भारत श्रद्धामयो योग पुरुषा जो जत्श्रद्ध स एव स त्यजन्ते सात्विका देवान् यक्ष रक्षांसि राजसा प्रेतान् भूतगणांश्चन्ये यजन्ते तामसा जना अशास्त्रविहितं घोरं तत्पन्ते ये तपोजनाः दम्भाहंकार संयुक्ता कामराग बलान्विता कर्षयन्तः शरीरस्थं भूतग्राममचेतसः माञ्चैवात्मान्तः शरीरस्थं तान् विद्धासुरनिश्चयान् आहारस्तपि सर्वस्य त्रिविधो भवति प्रियः यज्ञस्तपस्तथा दानं तेषां भेदमिमं शृणु आयुष्सत्त्वबलारोग्य सुख पृथिवीवर्धना रस्या स्निग्धा स्थिरा हृद्या आहारा सात्विक प्रिया कट्टम्ल लवणतुष्ण तीक्ष्ण रुक्ष विदाहिन आहारा राजस श्रेष्ठा दुख शोकामय प्रदा जात जामं गतरसं पूति पर्युषितं च जत् उच्छिष्टमपि चामेद्धं भोजन तामस प्रियम अफलाकांक्षीभिर्यज्ञो विधिदिष्टो जयुज्यते जष्टव्य मे वेति मनः समाधाय ससात्विकः अभिसन्धाय तु फलं दम्भार्थमपि चैव यत् इज्जते भरतश्रेष्ठ तं यज्ञं विद्धि राजसं विधिहीनम् अशिष्टान्नं मन्त्रहीनम् अदक्षिणम् श्रद्धा विरहितं यज्ञं तामसं परिचक्षते देवद्विज गुरु विप्राज्ञ पूजनं शौर्यमार्जवं ब्रह्मचर्यमहिंसा च शारीरं तपोच्यते अनुद्वेगकरं वाक्यं सत्यं प्रियहितं च यत् श्रद्धायाभ्यसनं चैव वाङ्मयं तपयुच्यते श्रद्धया परया तप्तं तपस्तत्त्रिविधं नरै अफलाकाङ्क्षिणो युक्तै सात्विकं परिचक्षते मनः प्रसाद सौम्यत्तं मौनमात्मविनिग्रह भावसंशुद्धिरित्येतत् तपो मानसमुच्यते सत्कारमान पूजार्थं तपोदम्भेन चैव यत् क्रियते तद् इह प्रोक्तं राजसं चलमध्रुवं मूढग्राहेणात्मनो यत् पीडया क्रियते तपः परशोत्सादनार्थं वा तत्तामसमुदाहृतं दातव्यम इति यद्दानं दीयते नूपकारिणे देशे काले च पात्रे च तद्दानं सात्विकं स्मृतं यत्.
All right. Okay, so now let's chant 11 to 20 together. Jai Shri Gurudev. Afalakanshibir yagyo vididishtu yayajate yashtavyame viti mana samadaya sasatvikaha abhisandayadu phalam dambartam api chaivayat Ijyate bharata shrishta tam yagyam vidirajasam vidihinam vashishtanam mantrahinam adakshinam shadavirahitam yagyam tamasam parichakshate deva dvija guru pragya pujanam shochamarjavam brahmacharjam ahimsacha shariram tapa uchate Anudvega karam vakyam satyam priya hitanchayat swadhyaya vyasanam chaiva vanmayam tapa uchate mana prasada somyatvam monamatma vinigraha bhavasam shudir ityetat tapomana samuchate shraddhaya paraya taptam tapasthatri vidam narai Afalakanshibir yuktai satvikam parichakshate sattara mana pujartam tapodambena chaivayat priyate tadiha proktam rajasam chalamadrivam buddhagrahinatmano yat hidaya kriyate tapaha padasyotsadanartam va tattamasam udahritam tatavyam itiyad Dhanam diyate nupakarine deshe kale cha patre cha tadanam satvikam smritam. Right. So Vasini, Didi, do you want to chant? Read those translations for us.
Okay, yeah. That sacrifice which is in accordance with scriptural injunctions and faithfully performed by a person free from fruitive desire is sacrifice of the nature of goodness. But, O Bharat, know that sacrifice which is performed in fruitive expectation and as a display of pomp and grandeur is sacrifice of the nature of passion. And that sacrifice which ignores the injunctions of the scriptures, which is performed without the distribution of foodstuffs, without uttering the appropriate mantras, without offerings to the priest, and without faith is known as sacrifice in ignorance. Worship of the deity, the Brahman, the spiritual master, and the enlightened soul, purity, simplicity, celibacy, and non-violence, these all constitute austerity of the body. Speech which does not disturb others, which is truthful, pleasing yet beneficial, as well as regular recitation of the Vedas, all these are known as verbal austerity. Self-satisfaction, benevolence, stability, mental control, and pure-heartedness are all known as mental austerity. When performed by a desireless, devout soul with deep faith in the Supreme Lord, this threefold austerity of thought, word, and deed is of the nature of goodness. That unenduring transitory austerity which is proudly performed for the sake of gain, worship, name, and fame is known as austerity of the nature of passion. That austerity which is performed with dubious intent, causing self-torture, or meant to harm others is known as austerity of the nature of ignorance. The gift which is given without expectation of return, with the conviction that it ought to be given at an appropriate place and time and to an appropriate recipient, is considered to be the nature of goodness.
Okay, thank you, Didi. Well, a lot of food for thought here, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really just wonderful how, these statements, they help us to kind of question our intention, right, in everything that we do. What is our motivation in the various ways that we carry out our lives, and how much we are acting from a place of authenticity, right? Very nice meditation. And this is nice speech, which is not disturb others, which is truthful, pleasing, yet beneficial. Okay, well, I don't know if does anyone have any comments they'd like to share? I don't think I have anything else. Gift which is given without expectation of return, with the conviction that it ought to be given. It's beautiful. At an appropriate place and time, into an appropriate. So these are all interesting points, like Srila Sridhar Maharaj made this point, right? He was actually speaking about Mahaprabhu. Actually, he was speaking about Gadadhar Pandit, one of the closest associates of Sri Chaitanya Dev, and how he made the ultimate sacrifice. And so our Param Guru Maharaj, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, made this point that when we go to consider the value of a particular sacrifice, we could also say gift, right? That's what's being said here. We have to consider two things. Like, one, what is the value of that? Like, how great actually is that sacrifice? How great actually is that gift, right? And he's there, Param Guru Maharaj was speaking about, how someone may make a great sacrifice in this world, but because it's still pertaining to our temporary existence, in the big picture, it's not of so much value, right? We may revere persons, say, who give up their lives, right? That's the ultimate thing to sacrifice in this world, right? To give up your life for a cause, right? Like that, like we can appreciate that, right? That's a very noble, high-minded thing to do. But in the bigger picture, then we'll say, well, hang on, we are not these bodies anyway. So how much value can that actually be, to sacrifice our body, if we're not the body in the first place, right? So it is a, higher sacrifice, a sacrifice of the ego, right? Then sacrifice of the heart, offering of the very self, of the Atma, right? And in the case of Gadadhar Pandit represents Radharani, right? Who is the female, represents the female, the feminine, divine feminine potency. So appearing as Gadadhar Pandit, Radharani is sacrificing her love, right? Her prema, her divine love, right? Because she's offering that to Krishna so he can experience that. That's the ultimate sacrifice. So that's one. So our Param Guru, he made this point, very interesting point, right? That on the one hand, we'll consider what is the value, what is the actual value of the sacrifice being made. And then on the other hand, how worthy is the recipient? Because sometimes, someone may make a very great offering, a great gift, a great sacrifice, but the person who it's being made to is not actually very worthy of it. And I'm sure that's something we've all been through in our lives, right? Just in our own small way. But you offer something with so much sincerity, but the person receiving it is not really worthy, not really appreciative, not capable of really receiving it, right? So then the whole transaction loses value. It's suddenly not so meaningful. It's a very sad thing, actually. And so in that discussion of our Param Guru, he's saying that, what is the sacrifice being made? Radharani is sacrificing her love, her divine love, her prema. And for who? For Sri Chaitanya Dev, who represents the highest manifestation of the divinity, right? So what is a higher sacrifice than that? And this is also an issue we can say, in our practicing lives, right? That we have to consider our own sincerity, right? And our own endeavor, our own effort. But we also have to consider through what channel is that being offered, because otherwise it's like throwing seed on barren grounds, right? So that was something our Gurudev used to express, that we must connect through the proper channel. Right? And our Param Guru Maharaj, she also used this very helpful phrase of opaque and transparent gurus. Right? That the opaque guru, nothing's passing through them. Right? Whatever you give to them, it's ending there. Like whatever their particular karmic world is, that's where your offering is entering and ending. Just going to get stuck there. And you will also actually be implicated, in the karma of that person. You may also have to bear reactions. Right? But the transparent guru, they're not living in the world of their own ego. The transparent guru, they're offering everything up. Everything is being offered up to their gurus, offering to their guru, and that is going, ultimately to the lotus feet of Shri Radha Krishna, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Right? Our Gurudev also liked to use the analogy of a telescopic lens. Right? That there are so many lenses that are connecting you with something very far away. Those lenses are not obstructing your vision. Right? Normally we'll think if we put something in front of our eyes, it will obstruct our vision, but rather those lenses are enhancing and enabling us to see something that would ordinarily be impossible to see with our eyes. So in the same way, our line of Guru Parampara, right, is the phrase that we use, the succession of gurus, line of gurus. They're acting like that lens, which is bringing what otherwise would be very impossible, far away from us, bringing that close to us. And everything we're offering to them, it is being offered up. So that's the type of channel that we want to connect to it. We have to be a little careful and discriminating about that. Otherwise, it is just like our offerings are entering some karmic reactionary plane. It will end in nothing at best. Well, at best, it will be good karma, actually. Su-karma, Gurudev made that. At best, it will be good karma. But at worst, it will be vikarma, bad karma. Scarlett, you have your hand raised.
Hare Krishna, and thank you for a wonderful class. Did I understood you right that when you donate something or give something to someone, if that person is not worthy, without you knowing it, this person is not worthy, then I get the karma of that person?
It depends. It depends. If that person is using, let's say you give money to someone, right? Let's use a clear example. If you give money to someone, but then they go and use that for some lower thing, then you are also implicated in that. Because it is all energy, right? It is all energy. So if that money is not being used, at least for some, not bad purpose, no, then that some reaction must come. And I also like to share, I think this is a good opportunity. This is a point that okay, let me go open this up here. So this was something, so Yudamanyu Prabhu, some of you are familiar with Yudamanyu Prabhu. He's like a legend in our community. He was preaching in China, South Africa. He more or less started our current mission in the US. And he and our Srila Sridhar Maharaj once gave him some advice about, he had collecting parties, right, who were raising funds for the mission. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj gave him 3 points, and I was trying to remember them recently. So I wrote to his wife. He's now passed on, but his wife is still with us. So I wrote to her and asked her to remind me what those points were. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj gave these 3 principles to follow when he was collecting. And the first one was, who you are giving the donations to must be a proper recipient who can properly digest the funds. And that's another point, that when we're receiving money, right, then there's going to be some karmic implication in that money that's coming, and we have to be able to digest that, right? And you saw in some cases our Gurudev was reluctant to accept donations if they came from a dubious source, and our Param Guru Maharaj also. And we also know some cases where both of them, if they knew for a fact that some money came from a questionable source, they would use it in a very particular way. Like use it directly for the service of the deities or something like that, because it's all energy. So this was the first point that Srila Sridhar Maharaj gave, that the person you're giving the money to, they have to be a proper recipient. They can digest that. And then the second point was to have within our own consciousness, not that we're trying to take money from people, but we're actually giving mercy, right? Because their money will be used in the service of the Lord. And so actually it's not that we're trying to, take people's hard-earned money, but we're trying to give mercy. That's actually what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect people to the Lord's mission. And then the third point was that in the way in which you're collecting the funds, to maintain the dignity of the mission, not to bring any disrepute. But we've heard, especially in the early days of the Krishna consciousness movement, we've heard of, some what can we say, strange methods, dishonest methods by which money was collected. So that's a kind of not directly related, but somewhat related. Scarlett, does that answer your question?
Yes, but somewhat worried me. Yes.
Don't worry, Scarlett.
Because, I mean, I often see the people, beggars, and I give them money because they sit there and they beg, please, I need food and so on. And I'm not rich and I don't have so much to give, but what I can give, I give. So now I get to hear that you're going to have that karma, and that makes me very.
I think that's fine. We're also human. We don't want to get too obsessed with the accounting, right? And I think it's a kind thing. I think it's a humane thing to do. And how much is it? It's going to be a couple euros, right? It's not a huge amount also. Our Gurudev, he actually told this very funny story of one of the godbrothers of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. who was he was like a little bit obsessed with this calculation, and he didn't want he didn't want any good or bad karma, right? Because he understood that whatever karma we incur, it's going to bring us back to this world. And so he was very extreme in not like accepting help or giving help. And so like he wouldn't give money to beggars. Our Gurudev said even when he came to visit their temple, he would like walk from the train station, and he would bring his own bedroll. He'd be carrying his own bedroll. Like he would, to an extreme, he would minimize any type of exchange that he would have with others. And our Gurudev said that he would tease him about that. Like, oh, look at that poor man. He has no eyes or no legs. Won't you help him with a few rupees? And he also said that Srila Sridhar Maharaj used to give. He used to give a few rupees to help, beggars on the street. It's just human. It's a I also, when I was younger, I used to be very fanatic. Like I would think all the money I have, only will go for Krishna, nothing else. But then, later on, I, hearing from our gurus, I understood we're also human. We can't ignore that. It's normal. Give something to someone on the street, some little thing, a couple dollars. There's also one story we heard about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He was out for a walk, I believe in Kolkata, and there were some like beggars asking for money, and everyone in the group of Saraswati Thakur ignored them and went walking. And then they walked some distance, and then Saraswati Thakur sat down, and he gave instructions on how it was the duty of householders to help those in need. And he said, otherwise, if you can't even do that, then your heart will become so hard that eventually you'll become averse to the service of Krishna. He went so far as to say that, So, there's such a thing as just ordinary kindness, and sympathy. So that is a normal thing, here. It may not be that in like a systematic way we're giving, big donations regularly to this charity and that charity, right? Not that it's a focus of our life, but if someone comes and is in front of us and they're in need, we can give a little something, right, to help them. So we never want to be extreme. We never want to be extreme in applying these principles. Common sense and human decency, they also count. Okay, we've got a lot of hands raised. Steve has been waiting.
I mean, I think you answered. It was just to follow up on Scarlett, because literally yesterday I was at a red light somewhere, and a woman was asking for money, and I gave her some, and she grabbed her bag and walked across the street to the fast food joint, and it's more than possible she bought a beef burger. And so, you were saying that there's that, fine line, of course, to give when it's, I do feel the way I was raised was, you should give when you can. And I did. And then, but I did have that thought, like, that's interesting. I felt good about it. Like she's eating, but then the thought of, is there, or what you're just saying, is there karma attached to that? Or is it so minor that hopefully the giving aspect outweighed or balanced out the fact that she may have eaten cow? What do you think?
I would say not to analyze it too much. I would say that you did your duty. You gave something to her, and she's someone in ignorance, right? If someone's ignorant, there's actually less culpability that's attached, And the fact is, she was hungry. That's all she knows, right? That's what was available, and I wouldn't analyze it too much. So I would just leave it at the fact that you that you did your duty, you gave a little something to someone in need. And what she did after that, maybe some little karma will come to you, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. We're living in a world where when we breathe, we're killing so many entities, right? That's the thing. Like the Jains, right? They're one religious group, and we hear about them sometimes wearing masks so they can, minimize the the disturbance that they're making, right? In a very extreme way, they try to minimize disturbance in the environment. But the fact is, we just can't avoid it. Someone may stop eating meat because it's aggression on the environment, but then you're also killing vegetables. Actually, there's also consciousness in vegetables. It may be less developed, but it's still there. There's also aggression there. There's also reaction attached, right? So the fact is, we can't avoid it, and in every moment, the plane is it's a plane that's so filthy that you can't actually avoid creating disturbance, even if you want to. That's the environment that we're in, right? So actually, the devotees, we're not worrying too much about karma. It's just kind of like knowing about how the plumbing is working, right? We know what's going on. It's helping us understand how the environment is working. It's giving us some awareness, but it's not a guiding principle of our life that, I want to avoid karma. That's not a guiding principle of our life. Let karma come and go as it will, according to providence, right? And the higher will. But we just want to serve Krishna. We want to increase our devotion. Right? That's not our business, actually. It's not our business. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
We have also some comments in the chat here. Some people taking advantage of our kindness, and we thought they are poor, but they think it's a way earning easy money without working hard. I mean, again, like that's actually their problem, right? Our duty is to be kind. And if other people are abusing that kindness, that's their problem. It's not our problem, right? And of course, we have common sense. If we find out someone was just taking advantage of us, then we won't continue to support that. We won't continue to enable that. But we don't need to lament about what is now lost. That's a principle of Dharma, right? We do our duty. Our duty is to do good. Whether others do good or bad, that's not our business. Right? There's this beautiful moment in the Ramayana, which I think about often, where Ramachandra, he's on the shore of the ocean, with his army, getting ready to cross over to Lanka to rescue his beloved wife, and Vibhishan, right? Vibhishan is the brother of his worst enemy, Ravana, right? And Vibhishan turns up in his camp. He's actually a devotee. He's a great devotee, Vibhishan, and he's coming to take shelter of Ramachandra. And meanwhile, Ramachandra's in a meeting with some of his advisors, and the news comes, Vibhishan has arrived here. He wants to see you. And Ramachandra asks his council, what do you think? And they all have different opinions. And some of them are saying, how can we trust him? He's probably coming here to, he's saying he wants to come, and he's coming in peace and he wants to take shelter, but he's probably trying to deceive you. And we can't trust him. And some are saying, you should just throw him in jail. And Ramachandra says, if someone comes to me and asks for shelter, it's my duty to give them shelter. And if they cheat me later, then that is their issue, that is their sin. That's not my issue, right? That's not my concern. That's not my business. The main principle, the first immediate principle now, is that if someone's asking me for shelter, I have to give them shelter. And if they're actually deceiving me, then that's their problem, And if it may appear that I've lost, but I haven't actually lost because I did my duty. So it's a very, very high and very noble principle. This is a principle of Dharma. And we have also a comment here. Could you kindly, from Tungarasa, could you kindly comment on the words of Lord Krishna about offering him whatever is offered in this connection? Well, I'm actually not completely clear on the question, but what comes to, I'll say something, you can tell me if it answers your question. There are different, actually this verse in Bhagavad Gita, Yat Karoshi, Yadashnashi, Yajdahosi Rasa Yat Tapasyasi Kunteya Tat Karusha Mad Arpanam. This is a famous verse, right, in Gita, where Krishna is saying, whatever you offer to me, whatever you do, make it an offering unto me, right? Like and the other day we had this discussion on this conversation known as the Ramananda Sambad, right? And that verse is actually included there. And in the context of that discussion, that verse is labeled as karma mishra bhakti, right? Means devotion that is mixed with our worldly desire, right? So then I would say that if there is some mixedness in the offering, there will also be some mixedness in the result. So if our offering is mixed with worldly desire, then there will also be worldly results that comes. And one very interesting comment of Bhaktivinoda Thakur is how offensive chanting, namaparad, can yield worldly gain. Gives you something to think about, doesn't it? Like if we're chanting with mundane desires, then that may actually fulfill those mundane desires, our chanting. It mentions in particular about the Kama Gayatri mantra, that the Kama Gayatri mantra, it has this twofold effect, that if we're chanting, Kama is desire, right? So if we're chanting with spiritual desire, it will fulfill our spiritual desire. If we're chanting with mundane desire, it will fulfill our mundane desire. So hearing these things really makes us have to look deep within our hearts, right? And question ourselves, how much do we really value this for what it really is, right? So I would say, yes, if we are approaching the Lord with some mundane desires, then, okay, there's some element of real devotion, then there will be some result within that plane, but there may also be result in fulfilling our mundane desires. The Lord actually, the Lord's also not handing out pure devotion so easily. That's another thing, right? And there are places in the scriptures where he's directly stating that. There's a verse in Bhagavatam where he directly states it. He said, I will easily give someone mukti, liberation, but I'm not so easily giving bhakti, pure devotion, pure bhakti, shuddha. I'm not so easily giving that, right? That's a hidden treasure, hidden thing. You have to really prove that you really want it and you're really worthy of it. It's also mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. The Lord says that if someone, you know, many persons who come to me for bhakti, I'll try and evade them. You know, there will be a bit of an obstacle course, and I'll tantalize them with the temptations of bhukti and mukti, right? Enjoyment and liberation. So it's you know, it's not going to be so easy. It's not going to be so straightforward. And there will be, as there is mixed intention, there will be mixed results. There's this wonderful talk of our Param Guru Maharaj, Srila Maharaj, where he's saying that Krishna is very selfish, and he wants the whole thing. He wants our whole heart. And he says, if we are giving him a part of ourselves, he will also reciprocate with a partial aspect of himself. Right? That's also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Right? Yeya tamam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamiham. As persons approach me, so I will approach them. And Priyahita has her hand raised. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much for your beautiful explanations. Relating this idea of doing our dharma, I have a question going back to the opaque guru. Where would that, how would one approach that if as a devotee, one's doing what they see as their service by offering things to the feet of their guru, just because that's what you do, you know, this is the guru who came, this is the guru who showed up, Krishna, as, you know, your guide. And if at some point, you know, maybe you have doubts, and it's really hard to navigate that, because who are you to have doubts? I mean, in some ways, right? There's so much occlusion in the mind, talk about opaqueness in the heart. And so you say, okay, but I'm doing my duty. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And if they, I don't know what they're doing with my offerings or my pure intention. I don't really know. Yet I'm doing my duties. So is that really my concern? Do you understand? As if it's a karma and I'm entering into their karmic circle, I know that they are connected, and maybe they have one foot in the spiritual and one foot in the material. Maybe they're that kind of guru. Maybe they're not completely surrendered. Who am I to say, though? Really? So I continue because this is my dharma. And how do we negotiate that?
Well, I think that's a noble mentality up to a point. You know, and I think it can actually be a dangerous mentality. I think it's something, I think that type of mentality is something that can be a cause for, you know, terrible things, actually.
It could be a blind thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. I mean, you know, how many terrible things have gone on because the followers said, well, I'm just following what they said, right? And that's my duty, right? So it's honorable and noble, I would say, up to a point, you know, and that ultimately we all have to take responsibility, right? We all have to take responsibility for our own spiritual lives. And yes, it's true that we don't necessarily know, right? We don't know. We can't know. Who are we to judge, as you said? And surely, you know, our own good intention, that counts for a lot. You know, if we're not, you know, we're not really sure. So that's one thing. You know, there's wait and see. You know, that's something our Gurudev used to talk about. You know, if you're when in doubt, you know, give your respects from a distance, wait and see, right? Prayer, you know, prayer is very powerful. And in my experience, when we have the necessity for truth, it is always revealed to us. If we really have that courage and honesty within our heart, I really want to know the truth. I'm ready for that, then the Lord will show us. So making that naked approach towards the Lord. Please reveal to me, what is the truth. Then we may be very surprised actually how things can come to us. And then finally, I will say that, our line is a line of shiksha. We are not a Diksha Guru Parampara, right? We're Shiksha Guru Parampara. So it's possible we may have a Diksha connection, a formal initiation with one individual who later, even from the beginning, we're not completely sure about. But, they may still be in a strong enough position to give us a connection. But then the shiksha is the living connection. And if we can find where is that living connection coming and give our focus there, give our attention there. So we don't have to feel, duty bound, by the Diksha connection. Truth is living and dynamic. Our chastity is not to a particular form, particular institution, or a particular individual necessarily, but our chastity is to the truth, right? Our surrender is to the truth. And so where we find the current of truth, we will put our head there. We are beggars of the truth. That is Srila Sridhar Maharaj's beautiful expression. And wherever we find the current of truth flowing, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj makes this point, right? Krishna likes to do things in a zigzag way, in a crooked way. He doesn't always work in a straightforward way. That it may be in the most unexpected direction, right? Where the current is flowing. Is it here? Is it there? Krishna is always moving, right? It is a living.
Vishaka Didi, can I say something?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, as Param Guru Maharaj say, heart is tasting machine. So our heart will guide us. If we are honest and sincere, our heart will guide because Lord is sitting in our heart. So He will guide us. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Guru Maharaj say, die to live, die to live. That's why Guru Maharaj say again and again, die to live. Yeah. Dandavas. Thank you.
Dandavad, thank you, Prabhu. Very nice. Hridayena Bhyanugyato. The heart will know, the heart will recognize. That is true. Thank you for your question, Prihita. I hope that was helpful. Any other comments from our group? Gaurav, I noticed that you dropped out and you came back. I don't know if you heard my answer to your question, but I hope it was answered.
I have one question, yeah.
Yes, Prabhu.
Like Gurudev said, always work under the guidance of a Vaishnava. Because we don't know what's what. So we have to work under the guidance of some Vaishnava. So I don't know how you find who can guide you really. I tried to work with many devotees earlier, but then later it became something else.
Well, I feel that everything that we just said kind of applies to that. We can wait and see, we can pray. And another thing is that, there's a difference between cooperating with people, harmonizing people, and actually giving our hearts to people. Right? We give our heart to our guru, right? You're blessed, you have that connection with the pure guru. So you give your heart to your guru. But in order to work within a community for the end's goal of offering service in a more glorious way, and we may have to make some compromise here and there, and accommodate others. Right? Srila Sridhar Maharaj, she actually gives this very interesting definition. We've heard him give several different definitions for humility, but this was one that he gave, that I will not be so rigid as to not be able to accommodate others. He gave that as a definition in one place of humility, to not be so rigid that we must accommodate others and their growth and where they are and their point of realization, right? So in a diplomatic way, we can say, when we're working in a combined way, then we need to make some accommodation. We may have to compromise a little bit. You know, our Gurudev did that. Our Gurudev didn't. No, Srila Sridhar Maharaj was rather uncompromising, actually. He liked to do things according to the highest principles, even if that meant he was alone. But our Gurudev was not like that. He wanted, why? Because he wanted to give the mercy of his Guru Maharaj to everyone. And so he made a lot of compromises. You know, he mentioned once that I'm not telling anyone what Krishna consciousness really is, because if I did, everyone would run away. You know, sometimes he'd comment on the style of kirtan that would go on and say, you know, but you know, we have to encourage everyone. He didn't like, if Srila Sridhar Maharaj was so uncompromising, he would literally like keep an ear on the daily kirtan in the temple. And if someone was playing the cartels a little too loud, he would send someone down to let them know. That's how strict he was, right? But our Gurudev, he knew, you know, if he did that, nobody would stay. You know? And his mood was to encourage everyone, right? So he would say that sometimes, you know, we must encourage the devotees. If, you know, our Guru, you know, in the way that our deities are taken care of, right? For example, often our devotees, they're decorating the deities more for how they appear to us rather than what's actually comfortable, because our gurus, they're seeing the deities as persons, not just stone statues, right? Our Gurudev, you know, was concerned that they were comfortable, right? And like putting strings and, you know, uncomfortable material. He didn't like that, you know, but he also said, you know, that's what he would say. They are enthusiastic. That was something he would say. They are enthusiastic. He doesn't want to kill their enthusiasm. So we you know, we have to be a little like that if we're gonna work together with others. You know, it is challenging, but if we can do that, then we're supporting others in their growth. That's the thing, right? Everyone's at a different point of growth. So we want to try to support the growth of others, be patient with one another. And also in that combined way, we can do something more beautiful, more glorious for Mahaprabhu's movement. So it is difficult, but ultimately it comes down to good old-fashioned Trinada Pisunichena, right? Humility, tolerance, and respect.
Also, I heard Guru Mai say religion means proper adjustment. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
And nice to see Marie joined us. Welcome. Nicole's also with us. Krishna and Johnny, and happy to be here with all of you. Happy to see all your smiling faces. Anyone have any last words before we end for today? Okay, well, it's been, you know, our discussions, they've been getting more juicy lately. It's been really nice going deep.
I have one thing, if it's okay.
Please, Gangalila, always love.
So when it came to the question of the sacrificing, the giving, and the karma, etc., I felt so super sober. Part of me was drying up. I was like, I disconnected, and I felt like this terrible grip of like, there's no way I can do it right. There's just like, I'm like, I was realizing how something was going out of hand inside of me. And then, so I was very, very happy when you were bringing it around to that we are not concerned with that. Because I thought that was just, it was just really amazing how it's detailed. They're giving the direction so detailed, and yet there is such a gentleness and not to worry about it. We don't want to get lost in these things we cannot oversee. So we're not even supposed to think about having to oversee something what's too far from our grasp. So and I started to come back, you know, and then I felt that my heart connecting again. I'm like, oh yes, how can I forget? I cannot have my Krishna consciousness come out of my head and think about rules and that I will never be able to fathom, you know. And that's yeah. So thanks for guiding me back home, and actually always an interesting journey. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for your time and for your gentle, sweet, loving guidance.
Thank you so much for your always thoughtful participation, Gangalila. And you know, I will add on to that yes, it's true that generally speaking, we're not concerned about karma, but these things are helpful in avoiding some things which are highly reactionary, you know, like for example, you know, like there are extreme things that we'll avoid, you know, for example, like money that was involved in the cow slaughter industry, right? Like that was something our gurus, they didn't want to accept that. They were reluctant about that. They were very careful about that. So yeah, generally speaking, we're not obsessing too much about the pluses and minuses, you know. But on certain points, yes, we have to be aware, like this could bring me such a heavy karma that it's going to become an obstacle in my spiritual life. Right? We have to consider that, you know, because we are human, we're still living in the karmic plane. And these types of extreme things, you know, we do want to avoid. In the big picture, you know, nothing can hold us back, right, within eternity. But we could be thrown off track for a while, right? So yeah, this is just kind of like helpful background information, right, which informs us to some extent in our daily decisions, but we don't obsess over it, for sure. We can avoid it altogether. So yeah, but thank you for bringing that up. There's actually a beautiful prayer of Nanda Maharaj, where he's saying, Nanda Maharaj, Krishna's father, right? He himself is saying this, you know, like he says, whatever is supposed to come to me, you know, according to my karma, according to the will of providence, let it be so, right? Manaso Vritayo Nasyu Krishna Padambujashaya, right? But my only prayer is that, you know, I may always be absorbed in Krishna. I may always remember Krishna. This is also Mahaprabhu's prayer. Nadanam, Najanam, Nasundarim, Kavitam, Jagadisha Kamaye. Mama Janmani Janmanishware Bhavatad Bhaktir Haituki Twai. Right. That, you know, even he mentions here, even birth and death, even the cycle of samsara. Let it come. I'm not interested in liberation. But I just want to remember Krishna. I want my devotion to Krishna to increase. This is the purest prayer. That is our main principle. We want to always remember the Lord, and we don't want to forget him. Smartavya satatam Vishnu, Vishnartavya najatu. To always remember and to never forget. That is our main principle. So whatever is supporting that, whatever is not supporting that, those are our considerations. Everything else is secondary. Okay, well, maybe we'll end there unless anyone else has any last words to share with our group. Radhana Rupini, you look like you wanted to share something.
I think it's just a fine line we have to walk, and it's called being conscious. We just have to be conscious, that's all. You know, we don't want to be fanatical, but we don't want to be 180 of that either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we just have to be conscious of our surroundings and who we associate with, how it affects us. Just being conscious and being present at the moment. It's so important. Because yes, we don't want to incur bad or good karma, you know, but we do it anyway. We're in this world. So just remembering the principles that our spiritual masters or our guides have given us, and be conscious, that's all.
Yes, I mean, it's an important point. And another thing is that, you know, related to this is that and our Gurudev has made this point too, that, you know, he said, if we're a liberated soul, we can do anything, right? But as long as we're not liberated, you know, we have to be aware of the fact that we are under the control of a reactionary environment. So generally speaking, we try to live a life that minimizes the reactions. That's why life in sattvic life, in sattva-gun, the mode of goodness is encouraged, because all those reactions are just going to disturb our cultivation of devotion, right? So yes, we are careful, as Radhana Rupini says, but we're also not fanatical. That's not the end goal, right? So yes, it is something to be aware of. Okay, well, thank you all so much for your wonderful participation. It's been another very lively, interactive meeting. Wishing you all a happy weekend, and look forward to connecting again next week. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Rakshata Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Jai. I see some last question appearing in the chat. We'll save it for next week. From Scarlett, I promise we'll do it next week. See you all next time.
Dandavats, thank you for your association.
Vishaka Didi Maharaj ki
Jai.
Jai.